So a few people have asked me now, what the heck is the deal with the first video on your YouTube channel? Well, the short answer is don't worry about it. The slightly less short answer is there is no meaning, I just made it for fun. But now let's talk about the long answer. So there's this app called TikTok. I don't know if you've heard of it, but on TikTok, quote unquote brain rot content goes viral all the time. And personally, I've never used TikTok before. I've never even downloaded the app, but I've definitely seen TikTok content before, either posted on other websites or maybe on someone else's phone. And I thought, hey, maybe I'll have a go at making my own viral brain rot content. Like, I've got some pretty silly ideas stored in the dome that might appeal to some TikTok users. So I made a few stupid TikToks. And my second post was a mashup of Nelly Furtado's Say It Right and the Jurassic Park theme song. Specifically the big reveal part in the movie where the music has that emotional swell and peak. And then I edited some of the prominent dancers and singers on the music video into the Jurassic Park scene. That's pretty much all there is to it. And then I uploaded it to my TikTok through web browser, since I don't actually have the phone app. And then I realized 99% of people aren't using TikTok on web browser, they're using it on their phones. And I did not make that video in a good aspect ratio for phones, so I figured it's probably best to be viewed on YouTube, and that's that. I've always made my YouTube videos for fun as a hobby, even when I started taking things a little bit more serious with these Pokemon Auto Chess videos. My old videos are mostly unlisted or deleted, but I thought it would be funny to leave just one random garbage video public, completely unrelated to Pokemon Auto Chess. But yeah, I have no plans on deleting that video, unless Nelly Furtado decides to strike it down. But as a fellow Canadian, I feel like me and Nelly Furtado have the same respect for fair use. But yeah, go check out that video if you want to see some garbage content. And also check out Sandshrew for President and Electric Eli's streams from last Saturday. That's the 24th of May, because I was a featured guest on that stream. It was a lot of fun playing non-stop Pokemon Auto Chess, and that's also what we're doing right now in this video. We're starting things off with an electric opener. I've already evolved myself a Flaffy, and I'm also finding some very nice items for Pichu. I think I have very good potential for a win streak here, so I make myself a muscle band. And we're gonna start rolling right away, looking for some early evolutions. Mostly trying to find a Pikachu and capitalize on these item components, because I'm also able to make myself a Stardust, which combos very nicely with the muscle band I've made. The muscle band will give me stats upon taking damage, and the Stardust will give me shields upon casting abilities. It works very nicely for Pichu, who dashes around with its ability. But Pichu has very poor stats, and I really need to evolve it into Pikachu. But unfortunately, after committing a ton of rolls, I'm not even able to find a second Pichu. And also unfortunate is that my first opponent already has 2 evolved Lairons, and has also leveled up to level 4. So this is probably going to be a round lost. But somehow, Pichu is able to get the perfectly timed cast, saving its life. It locks down my opponent's Pokemon with paralysis. It's fully stacked up with its muscle band, surviving even through the flinch. And Flaffy's also contributing a ton. Somehow, I'm able to completely scam a win out of my opponent. Alright, we've got our first draft, and I'd really like to pick up the Charcoal, but there's no way I'm adding a fossil unit to the game, nor do I want to add Capsakid, who can also be quite dangerous with the right player and team comp, so I'll settle for Shelder and a Twisted Spoon. This round, I was also able to evolve myself an Alolan Graveler, a very solid early game frontline unit. I also decide to run Light 2 synergy, giving my Pichu a little bit more damage potential. Kind of an awkward light spot this game, but we can definitely maneuver our team around to make it work, especially in the early game. Next round, however, I am taking on some very dangerous grass units. Grass has definitely fallen off in recent patches, but it's still decent early game, and with an evolved Bayleaf with those crit items, I can say goodbye to my dreams of an early game win streak. Alright, as we continue along, I find a Chinchou in the shop, much appreciated to whoever added that into the game. Now, I'm in a bit of an awkward situation because I would like to run both Litwick and Chinchou in order to hit Light 3 synergy, but I would have to get rid of one of my strong units or sell off Pichu, which is supported by its favorite items. Ultimately, I decide to give up on the Pichu and swap its items over to Graveler, but I'm a little too slow, and the round starts before I'm able to transfer those items, but thankfully we're against a weak baby team, so my team's gonna have no problem taking this down. Next round, let's evolve ourselves a Lampent, and then I make the item transfer. Now we have a very strong Graveler, and once again we're matched up against a baby team, and that is yet another decisive victory. Alright, next ad pick. I definitely don't want to add the fossil, but I also don't have any reason to grab this Never Melt Ice. I want the Mystic Water for sure, but I am a little bit concerned about adding a baby unit to the game. So many players are running baby teams right now. It is a little bit worrisome of helping someone get baby 7, but you know what? I'm willing to take this risk. Who knows, maybe the 3 baby players will run into each other and mess up each other's golden egg streaks. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but whatever. I've done my part in not adding 2 fossils to the game. Now let's take on this wild team with a Nidorina and a Lairon, and because of my items and light synergy, Graveler is able to make short work of that team. And as we get into our PvE round against Gyarados, I'm realizing I have a fairly good setup for Cosmog. Cosmog is a very interesting, unique unit. I'll get into it more if I do find the Cosmog, but to know whether you should go for Cosmog or not, you need to have high health, a good amount of economy, a workable light spot, and items that would either support a frontline ability casting carry, or items that support a backline ability casting carry. And also you would want to match your light spot to that corresponding item set. I happen to have good frontline items, and my light spot can work for a frontline unit. Other things that are helpful but not necessary are an evolutionary stone, ideally a dawn stone, which I am halfway of obtaining. An amulet coin can be very handy, though that's not in my game plan, and also being low level. I have committed 0 money into experience points so far, so we can also check that off the list. And with Gyarados taken down, I'm really hoping I can grab myself a light portal and find a Cosmog. If I'm not able to find Cosmog, then I'll just continue along with my electric light synergy. Thankfully, I am able to grab a light portal right away, and there it is, the exact unit I was looking for. Let's talk about Cosmog. Cosmog is extremely weak and its ability is quite poor. It just teleports to the corner and does a little bit of extra damage on its next attack. But Cosmog gains permanent HP every time you evolve a Pokémon. Once you evolve 10 Pokémon, Cosmog will evolve into Cosmoem. Cosmoem is also very weak, but if you're able to evolve 10 more Pokémon, Cosmoem will evolve into either Lunala or Solgaleo. And these 2 units are extremely powerful. Now, the conditions of getting 20 evolutions is insane. In an average game, if you play properly, you might not even hit 10 total evolutions, especially after stage 10. But if you have Cosmog as your unique pick, you are not going to be playing a normal game. As we take on a very weak looking fairy team, we can quickly mention that I've already used a Ditto to evolve myself a Lantern. I've also made myself a Soldew, which is a good item for Cosmog. I've already sold off all of my evolved units, and I've replaced a lot of them with their unevolved counterparts, because my game plan is pretty much just to buy every 1 cost that I can and sell them immediately once they evolve. Aside from Eevee, this is the fastest and cheapest way to grab yourself evolutions. And look at this, even though Cosmog is extremely weak, my combination of carry items is popping off right now. My muscle band is fully stacked, giving me tons of stats. Stardust is giving me tons of shields. And the Soldew generates a ton of ability power, but in the end, I just barely lost the round. My opponent's Fido is unfortunately able to put Flinch on my Cosmog, and that's what lost me the round. Let's also talk about how in this draft, I'm able to find myself a Galarian Ponyta, both Psychic and Light Synergy, and it's also a fantastic frontline support unit. I was really hoping to find a Fossil Stone in that draft for Eevees, but I'm probably even more happy to find myself a Galarian Ponyta. And no more action this round. Ideally, you want to get your Cosmog evolved super quickly, but you also don't want to destroy your economy if you can afford not to. And we'll continue along with our good economy, fully expecting to lose every round. And you know what? Let's throw up an evolution counter, which is currently sitting at 1, and we'll lose to this Fossil Dragon team, which is definitely going to be scary in the late game, but hopefully I'll be even scarier, and I did my part in not adding any fossils into the game. Alright, next carousel, we've actually got a shop, a Synergy Stone shop, which is both a blessing and a curse for me. It's a blessing because I'll be able to grab an evolutionary stone and use Eevees, but the downside is that it costs 10 money to pick this up, and I really need all the money that I can get, because I'm really feeling like I'm starting to fall behind with my evolutions. I'm already at the 3rd round after picking up my Cosmog, and I only have 1 evolution, so at this rate, I'm very behind. But overall, I'm very happy to get a Psychic Stone. It's probably the most useful evolutionary stone for Cosmog, and we're going to evolve ourselves an Espeon and then sell it off immediately. And then I'm able to evolve myself a Lampent and unlock a Ditto in the shop. I'm awkwardly sitting at 49 money, and I want to end at 50 so I can sell off one of my bench units if I have to. And before the next fight, I do decide to make a second muscle band, and I'll throw that on my tanky Ponyta, which is going to be a core unit for my team. We'll take on a Steel team with an Aggron, and unsurprisingly, it's another loss. Alright, next round we'll grab a Flaffy, we'll grab a Poliwhirl. I sell off my Poliwhirl immediately, but Flaffy gets to stay in. Since I am utilizing my Light 5 synergy, and I'm trying to mitigate as much damage as I can while I'm doing these evolutions, I will sell off the Light units if I am able to find a replacement for them. For example, this Litwick replacing my Lampent. And because I am quite behind with my evolutions and my health is starting to dip, I do commit a little bit of extra money into rolling below 50 gold. Here is a Kakuna, alongside an Eevee, which can be cloned with Ditto. That's 2 more evolutions. And we'll take on this grass team that has a Roselia and a Glalie. Those are some very powerful units to have at this point of the game, but whatever. It's not like I was expecting to win this round or anything. Alright, we are now against Mewtwo and Mew, which actually poses quite a threat to Cosmog teams. Thankfully, I do have very good items and Light 5 synergy, and some of my units are actually decent. It's better to roll for evolutions outside of these PvE rounds, but I am a little bit scared of losing. So I'll do what I can to try to get stronger. A minor amount of panicking and weird thinking makes me put a Dawnstone on my Pichu. I also put my Ponyta on my Light Spot, which I think is my strongest unit. And the round starts, so here we go. I'm holding my breath, praying that I don't embarrassingly lose to Mewtwo and Mew. Thankfully, the Light Spot is working perfectly for my Ponyta, who's able to provide tons of shielding for my Cosmog. And alongside Lantern, they are able to take down Mewtwo and Mew. No embarrassment for me. And I also decide to pick up a Black Glasses to make a Fluffy Tail. And with that, let's continue to look for evolutions. When my bench is full, I will sell off the individual units and replace them with units that I can make pairs of. Finally, I'm able to find my 10th evolution and evolve myself a Cosmoem, which is still a very weak unit, but at least it has some pretty decent defenses. We'll need 10 more evolutions in order for our Cosmoem to either evolve into Lunala or Solgaleo. If you get that 10th evolution while it's sitting on a Light Spot, it will evolve into Solgaleo, which is what I'm going for. And if it's off of the Light Spot, then it will evolve into Lunala instead, who you can then put back onto your Light Spot after it evolves. I only go for Lunala if my Light Spot is in a backline corner or right beside it. Otherwise, you can pretty much make any other spot work for Solgaleo. And look at this fight we're taking on an electric team, but this opponent's team is quite lacking in terms of damage, and pretty much my entire team got taken out very quickly, but my Cosmoem still stands, thanks to Light 5 synergy and its carry items. With the Soldew stacked up super high, it's actually able to take down the remainder of my opponent's team. Very happy to preserve a little bit of HP here, even if it does mean ending our loss streak, because even when you are able to get yourself a Lunala or a Solgaleo, the rest of your team is usually still super weak, and you'll still need to be able to lose some extra rounds until you can finally piece together a team that can consistently win every round. Alright, as we continue to roll, still getting more evolutions. While I was playing this game, I obviously didn't have a counter, but I could definitely sense that I was getting pretty close. And as we get into what I thought would be the last roll of my preparation phase, I end up being given 2 evolutions here. And now, because I'm dipping below 50 money, I'll use that as an opportunity to continue rolling. I'm able to find myself 1 more Eevee and evolve an Espeon. And while that happens during the portal animation, I noticed that my Cosmog kind of disappeared for a second. And I'm wondering to myself, was that it? Was that the 20th evolution and I've got myself a Solgaleo? No idea, because the battle has already started, but we'll find out after I lose to this scary Morpeko Electric Dark team, that is. Obviously, because I have this counter on the screen, you can tell that I don't have it yet. But here is another shop carousel. This time we can buy artificial items. Once again, the 10 gold cost of this really does hurt, but at least I'm able to grab myself a Light Ball, which is an item that gives light synergy. Extremely great potential and very useful for my late game team. But once again, I'm rolling below 50 money, and I'm hoping that once this carousel ends, I'll see a Solgaleo on the other side. But nope, I have a Cosmoem that has 290 HP, but 1 more evolution is going to do it for me, and that's going to work right away in Breaksin. There it is, one of the strongest units of the game. It's time to start stabilizing my team. I've got very little HP to spare. We'll go up to level 6 and use this temporary Breaksin. Because of the Light Ball, we can afford to sell off one of our light units and replace it with a Psychic unit. We'll say goodbye to Lampent and hello to Hatchram, which gives us Psychic 4 synergy. That's going to be a huge boost in ability power to my Psychic units. We also have Fairy 2 synergy, not very consequential. But here we go, let's see our Solgaleo in action. We're taking on a Dark team, and while some of my units get taken down very quickly, my fully itemized Light and Psychic enhanced Solgaleo takes off and completely devastates my opponent's team in a single cast of its ability. Its ability is honestly ridiculous. It takes off into the sky and it comes down like a meteor. It always relocates and tries to hit as many targets as possible. And while it can still take damage to effects like poison, it becomes untargetable when it's casting its ability. So basically an almost invincible unit that's also fairly tricky to position around. My team is finally strong and it can only get stronger from here. I should also quickly mention that I made a fluffy tail for my Ponyta. And let's take on this fairy team. They're packed tightly in the corner, which is a pretty good way to protect a carry like Brion, which in my opinion, Popplio's line is actually the strongest unit in the entire game. And unfortunately, with some really poor targeting, my Solgaleo fails to kill that Brion, and that not fully evolved hatch unit pretty much solos my team. Alright, we're now against Lugia and Ho-Oh. We're still only level 6. I end up doing a bit of shop rolling looking for a useful unknown. We'll do a bit of gambling with Unknown G to see if it can net us some extra gold while we take on Ho-Oh and Lugia. Unfortunately, the answer is no, because that Lugia decides to ruin that Unknown's day. Oh well, now we've got our legendary portal carousel, and I don't really care what I get, as long as it either has light or psychic synergy. I am able to grab a portal with both psychic and light synergy. And with my legendary selection, a relatively simple choice, I'll pick up a Xerneas. As a unit, Xerneas can be relatively weak, but it does have 3 range, and its ability is a very potent self buff. So if a battle goes on for long enough, and your opponent's team fails to pick off Xerneas, it's going to scale up a ton with its ability, and it's going to be able to dish out so much damage on every single attack. I also get a perfect final crafted item in upgrade for that Xerneas, and I also give it a Psychic Stone, which splashes Psychic Synergy onto it and gives it a ton of ability power. That makes its buffing ability a lot more powerful, and this round I also did commit a lot of money into my team, allowing me to use 6 Psychic units and hit Psychic 6 synergy. I evolved my Hatenna into Hatchram, and swapping around even more units, I'm able to find Ralts, which brings me to Fairy 4 synergy, which is actually significant thanks to Xerneas being a backline attack damage dealing carry. Here's our first opponent after obtaining our legendary. It's the Dragon Fossil player with a lot of strong evolved units, but because there have been only a few fossil Pokemon added to the game, you're welcome everyone, as well as the overabundance of shops that fail to give fossil stones, this player only has Fossil 4 and not Fossil 6, and my 2 carry units are able to do tons of damage, and that pretty comfortably wins me the fight. Alright, at this point of the game, I have no money, and I'm also only level 7, which even for a Solgaleo game is pretty bad. And as much as I'd like to build up my economy and finally hit level 8, I'm not fully confident that I've completely stabilized. I'd like to get at least one more evolution. For example, this Metang in the shop that I can't yet afford. This, however, is going to be our biggest test. Sandshrew, who's been sitting comfortably in first place. He hasn't dropped a single round since the early game. And to that, my Solgaleo says, not anymore. This year, it's Big Wef for president as we take them down and put an end to that very long win streak. Alright, we've got another carousel here, and none of these items seem amazing to me. The only unit that I have right now that warrants another item is Xerneas, and I want to give that guy attack speed, so either the blue orb or the Razor Fang will do. Since I don't have a lot of crit, I'll just take this blue orb, which is probably the better of the two. And there we go, we've got our 2 kitted out carries, and we've just evolved ourselves a Metang. And because Metang is much more useful than Routes, we'll swap over that Light Ball. Next fight, we'll take on a Steel team, and while there are a lot of very scary units on this Steel team, they have a pretty poor set of items. I'm seeing pretty much no attack damage and very little attack speed, so even though my weaker units get taken out pretty quickly, my 2 important units are pretty much unscathed, as Solgaleo once again takes everything out. After winning these recent rounds, I'm feeling pretty comfortable with my team. It's time to finally build back up my economy, and maybe even level up and get an 8th unit in. Here we'll take on an Electric Artificial Fairy team, which is utilizing that very strong new Iron Valiant, but it still gets one shot by my Solgaleo, and that's going to be another round 1, knocking out a player, bringing me to the top 4. Alright, here we're taking on a PvE round, the Legendary Birds, and I'm going to use Unknown M and Unknown G to hopefully get me some extra gold. And this time, thanks to that Unknown M, my Unknown G is able to cast, giving me 5 extra gold. And for my item, I decided to grab a Rocky Helmet. Not an amazing item, but my best units are already fully itemized. Out of the 3, it's probably the most useful item because I just want to make my units as tanky as possible, since I definitely don't need any more damage. Let's take on the fairy team that I struggled with in the past. This time, they've got a fully evolved Primarina with some very dangerous items. Once again, they're able to keep it safe with good positioning and take down my carry Solgaleo, but this time, I've got a Xerneas, and Solgaleo has kept them busy enough for Xerneas to pop off, and with my Xerneas staying safe and healthy, it's able to finish off whatever Solgaleo couldn't, and we'll get our revenge and win another round. Okay, we're starting to get close to 50 money again. We could get to level 8, but might as well maximize the amount of money I'm able to earn before I do commit to go to level 8. Since I have beaten every remaining player and I can afford another loss, no reason to dump all my money just yet. we're taking on Sandshrew once again. He's got 2 Swadloons, which is a very powerful unit. Even without items, a Swadloon is almost able to take down my Solgaleo, at least its first life. But once again, while my front line is eating up lots of damage, our Xerneas is our backup. It's completely safe in the back, and we win this round with both of our carries still alive. Another item carousel, and once again, no standout items, so we'll take the Rocky Helmet, the only tank item of this selection. We're finally once again above 50 money. We can finally now work towards level 8, which is not what you want to be saying at stage 27, but obviously the circumstances of this game were a little unique. A little unique as in Cosmog is a little unique Pokemon. And in this preparation phase, since I am going to be facing that fairy team, Primarina does damage to a target and all adjacent units, so I'm trying to spread my team apart to minimize Primarina's potency, but strangely, my opponent is also spreading their team apart. That is definitely a mistake because it exposes their Primarina to be knocked out early, but we'll see what happens as we take them on. And yeah, a big mistake as it gets taken out instantly with our Solgaleo's cast. That does, however, give their Kirlia a bit of time to shine, because that Kirlia does have some really strong backline carry items. I think they were trying to split apart their 2 carries, let one get knocked out by Solgaleo but keep the other one alive. And to this player's credit, it almost works. Keyword almost. I honestly think if they boxed their units and nestled their Kirlia behind their front line, they'd probably win against me, as both Kirlia and Primarina likely would have survived Solgaleo's first cast, but we'll never have to find out because they've been taken out of the game. We'll continue along with this PvE round against the legendary dogs, and I'm trying to mess around with unknowns, but honestly, trying to figure out how to utilize unknowns is kind of a headache, and I do a very poor job here. I only get an unknown G in, and I also fail to make my team weak enough for that unknown G to actually pop off. So basically, a good amount of gold wasted there for no reason. Let's just pick up an Assault Vest, which is actually a very useful item against Sandshrew's grass team. And since this is likely the last fight of the game, let's throw an unknown exclamation mark, or I like to call it unknown! We'll also finally spend all of our money rolling down for evolutions, grabbing ourselves a Kirlia, and finally getting a Galarian Rapidash. But here we go, let's take on Sandshrew's grass team with a lot of very scary units. Solgaleo doing its thing, taking down unit after unit with its very strong ability, and my unknown pops off, spawning even more unknowns, and we'll win this fight with 4 Metatites on the field. That's gonna be a very awesome first place. Thank you all so much for watching. Always appreciative of everyone's love and support in the comments. I'll see you all in the next game. Take care.